Oh, thank you. No sound. Hey, y'all. Let me know if you can hear me now. Can y'all hear me now? He touches my soul and my spirit. Y'all let me know. He's giving me love. Yes, I done one. Steady love. I said happy love day when y'all couldn't hear me. Happy love day. And I dedicated that song to my boo. Hey, Car Jones. Whenever you are able to see this. But hey, y'all, again, happy love day. Happy love day. If you are here, let me know. I see you, Doug. Hey, mama. Hey, y'all. And if you are catching a replay, hashtag replay so I can know you called it. For those who may not know me, my name is Elise. I am the founder of Parenting for the Culture. So thank you for joining Growing in Gentleness, which is a weekly conversation for the gentle and the not so gentle parent or caregiver. So, you guys, you may or may not know, February has been the month where we are looking at different African proverbs just to see what wisdom can we take from them and apply to our own parenting. So I see y'all still coming in. Hello, hello again. Tell me you here or hashtag replay. All right. So with that being said, we're going to jump right in. I told y'all we're getting straight to the point in February with these proverbs just to look at them, unpack them a little bit. And then, like I said, yeah, see how we can apply it to our parenting. So today's proverb is a child who fears beating or a beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. This is a Nigerian proverb. And how it originally reads again is a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. So, for my people who are with me, I would love to know, based on this. So, translation: a child who was afraid of getting in trouble is not going to admit that they did anything wrong, right? So, based off of that, the child in this proverb, what do you guys say this child needs to learn? I'm curious if anybody is able to share. I'll wait for a second. What do you think? What would you say this child needs to learn? Love is patient. What y'all think? What does this child need to learn? Don't be afraid to just throw something out there. Based on this child, it's a child who is not being honest. What do you think? What would you say? And if not you, what do you think another parent or another adult may say this child needs to learn? Come on, kid. Tanisha, I don't even want to put y'all. Hey, Tanisha. Yes, she said, oh, she added something else. No, that's it. She said that their parent is a safe space for their truth. Yeah, Tanisha is amazing parent advocate, child advocate, and she hit the nail on the head because the reality is a lot of us may assume or think that this child needs to learn integrity or this child needs to learn to be honest. But actually, this child does not need to learn to be honest. They need to learn that it is safe to be honest, right? And so again, Tanisha hit the nail on the head. Hey, girl, absolutely. That this child needs to learn that it is safe to be honest. And so I think this is a huge thing to hit on with this proverb because again, it said a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. So the thing about fear is that when our body is in that state, it releases a stress hormone in our bloodstream that literally kicks us into survival mode. So hypothetically speaking, you guys, if you were walking down the street and a pit bull was coming towards you full force, what y'all gonna do? What's your natural response? Again, if a pit bull is coming towards you full force, you running down, you walking down the street, minding your business, they are running towards you, barking. What is your response going to be in that moment? I'm gonna wait on y'all. I don't know if I got a delay. I see y'all numbers. So all of y'all not able to respond, but I'm gonna give y'all a second if you're trying to. So again, a scenario: you minding your business, walking down the street, a pit bull is coming towards you full force. How you responded? I'm laughing at this first one, which says play dead. That's real. Play dead. Anaja said, hey Naja. She said she is out of there. And same thing with Tanisha. She said she is running. So absolutely. Anybody got anything different? I see Jessica. Hey, y'all. Jessica says she is running also. So, absolutely, those responses make complete sense. So, literally, everything that you guys just named is what you probably are familiar with as fight or flight response, right? So, no one said they're going to fight. Nobody picked up no sticks or nothing, but that would have been a fight response to attack or defend yourself in some type of way. Silva, y'all said you're going to run away. That's flight. And then Dawn mentioned that she will freeze, which was play dead, right? So that is our fight or flight response, which is what those hormones that I mentioned, those fear hormones that release into our bloodstream, that is what they encourage our bodies to do naturally, right? It's how we are wired to survive. And so we are familiar with fight, flight, or freeze, with what you guys just named. But I think there's another powerful fear response that can be added to fight, flight, or freeze, which is also fib, meaning to be dishonest. Because again, a child who fears a beating will never admit that he played with a missing knife. So this proverb is really a beautiful reminder when it comes to how we can be intentional as parents to produce an environment that encourages our kids to be honest with us. Because if we're going to be honest, fear isn't really the best approach if that's our desired outcome. Again, if your desire as a parent, I understand I may not be speaking to everyone, but I think I'm speaking to a lot of people. If your desire as a parent is to cultivate an environment and a character of honesty, then we have to create that environment to where it is safe to be honest, like Tanisha named earlier. All right. So I just want to give you guys 4 questions to consider. All right. 4 questions to consider. Again, if you are a parent who that is your desire for your child in your household, I want to give you guys 4 questions to consider. And the first one is what we already hit on, which is this fear? So when we are in the face of anything that sounds like dishonesty from our kids, I want us just to ask ourselves, is this fear? Because the reality is, and I say this with so much compassion, no judgment, but the reality is, if it has been the norm in a household that any type of aggression, pain, or fear is used to discipline, then it's possible that when we see dishonest character traits, it's possible that what we are witnessing is, again, that wired nature for desire, that fight, flight, or freeze response, adding the fib to that. Okay. So it's possible that what we are witnessing is that, again, that natural desire. So kids quickly learn that one way to avoid anger or pain is to not admit to anything that could result in anger or pain, right? So as a result, we could see more hiding, more sneaking, more dishonesty, because from their lens, it is not safe to be honest. All right. So it's just the first question I want us to consider. When we are looking in the face of dishonesty, I want us to consider, is it fear? Is this fear that I'm seeing show up? The second question I want us to consider is this development? Is this development? And so this is especially important for younger kids. So regardless of how bright, how intelligent a child is, in their first 7 or 8 years of life, they don't fully understand that reality is a fixed thing, meaning they struggle to separate fantasy and wishful thinking from reality. And this is a natural stage of development. So the same way, younger kids believe in superheroes and unicorns, they also believe in their ability to change facts. So when they say they didn't do it, what they mean is, so I'm sorry, I'm pitching them on with my kids. I didn't do it. So when they say they didn't do it, what they mean is they wish they didn't do it. And they are trying to make that true. Okay. So again, between those early ages 7 and 8, it's really hard to separate reality from fantasy. And so a lot of time it's that wishful thinking that is coming out in their answer. So again, I want us to just pause and ask the question, is this development? Another question I want us to consider, just to ask ourselves, is it embarrassment or shame? So it's even harder, and we know this from experience, right? As adults, it's even harder to admit to mistakes or wrong choices if there's a high chance that the response I'm going to receive will produce even more shame or embarrassment. We have to remember shame causes us to hide. And so many times it looks like hiding behind a lie. And so we have to pause and ask, even has our past responses been something that has produced more shame or more embarrassment? Okay, again, something to consider. Just a question I want us to ask ourselves: is it embarrassment or shame? And then the fourth question I want us to ask ourselves when we again are handling moments of dishonesty: is it acceptance? And so something I think is super important for us to remember as parents is that many times what we label or see as kids trying to deceive us is actually kids trying to please us. Super common. We're labeling as deception when actually they are trying to please us. And this can again be especially true for the child who only feels seen or accepted or praised when they're doing things right. Right. So something we want to just be mindful of and keep on our radar. So again, those four questions were: is it fear? Is it development? Is it embarrassment or shame? Or is it acceptance? Curious to know, if you're able, just type in the chat one, two, three, or four. If there's a question that stood out to you or a question that resonated with you, thinking about what stage your child is in, just one, two, three, or four. If there's a question that stood out to you, maybe it's a question you feel like you could benefit from asking yourself more often, but just type in the chat one, two, three, or four if any of those resonated with you in any way. All right. So those are the four questions that can really help us begin to look beneath the behaviors. I know a couple of weeks ago we had Tamisha Bland on, and she talked about how behavior is communication, right? Behavior is always communicating. Something I add to that: behavior is communicating a need. And so when we ask these questions, we're able to look beneath the behavior to again help cultivate that honesty. All right. So outside of those four questions to ask ourselves, for the parent who wants to just be intentional about encouraging honesty, before we close, I just want to leave you guys with just four nuggets. Okay. Four ways to encourage honesty along with those questions to ask ourselves. All right. So four ways to encourage honesty. The first one is to be honest. Y'all know last week, anybody remember last week, Proverbs we talked about? Last week, Proverbs was: train up a child in the way that he should go, but make sure you go that way also. We stepped on our own toes last week of just being intentional about, are we practicing the things that we are preaching? And so being honest ourselves is a huge way to cultivate that, especially when it comes to how we respond to our kids. If we're honest, sometimes we'll tell dishonest things, right, in an attempt to avoid them being upset. I'm thinking about one day the kids want to go to the park, and instead of me just saying actually I desire to say something, the park, is not, oh, the park is always open, right? But it's like, actually no, the park is too cold, we're not going to the park today. But even in those simple examples, just being honest, we are modeling that. So again, as we train them up, make sure we're going the same way also. And so the first way to encourage honesty is to be honest, no matter how small or how major that seems. If you guys again caught last week, I shared a story about that morning with our son, and you got to go watch it if you missed it. But again, even these smallest things, making sure we are modeling that honesty also. So that's the first way to encourage honesty in our households and with our children, is to make sure we ourselves are being honest. The second way to encourage honesty is to acknowledge honesty. Have you ever had a situation with your child where they have done something and we ask if they've done it, and then they say they've done it and now they're in trouble? Not saying no consequences should follow, but did we first pause to acknowledge, thank you for telling the truth? Thank you for being honest. I appreciate that. I know that was not easy. I know that was tough, but thank you for being honest. That is a powerful way to cultivate that and encourage that, when we actually pause and acknowledge our appreciation when they actually are honest. Because sometimes again, we can jump to the next thing because of the frustration of whatever happened, instead of acknowledging and appreciating them for being brave in their way to be honest. All right, so that's the second way to encourage honesty. The third way to encourage honesty is to avoid shaming, right? Goes along one of the questions that we said we should ask ourselves. So ways to avoid shaming: one is to be mindful of who's around as we're having these conversations. Be mindful of our tone, of our words, because it's so important to separate our children from their behavior. Super important, because shame doesn't say this is what you've done. It says this is who you are. So avoid things like calling them a liar. Avoid things like calling them bad or mischievous, because we want to separate the behavior from the person. When we connect the two, more than likely, shame is the result. All right. So we want to avoid shaming them. And then the fourth and final way I want to encourage us all to cultivate honesty and encourage honesty is to avoid baiting. And what I mean by that is, yeah, why do we ask questions we know the answer to? Like why? Why do we ask questions we know the answer to? And we would consider that baiting. If we know the answer, I don't need to ask you, did you do this or not? If I already know the answer. And again, especially think back to what we said about the kids in those first 8 years of life that struggle to separate wishful thinking and fantasy from reality. I should not pose you a question that I already know the answer to. Prime example, my son went to the restroom, and I'm in the kitchen. Now I see the stool that he uses to wash his hand beside me in the kitchen, right? So he comes out the restroom trying to run back and go play. And I wanted to ask, did you wash your hand? But I paused because I already know the answer, because I'm looking at your stool in the kitchen. So I know you didn't wash your hands. So instead, baby, I got your stool. Let's go back to the bathroom and wash your hands. Because 9 times out of 10, if I would have said, did you wash your hands? He probably say yes. Not because he's dishonest, but because I understand at where he is developmentally. He's 2 years old. Hard to separate that wishful thinking and fantasy from reality. Also, the excitement to get back to play. We don't have to make this into a whole thing. I have your stool. Let's go back to the bathroom because it's important that we wash our hands, right? So let's not bait them, because that could have been a whole nother conversation of back and forth. Sometimes we put ourselves, even parents of teenagers, sometimes we put ourselves in unnecessary power struggles by asking questions we already know the answer to. I'm not talking about assumptions. I'm talking about things you flat out know to be true from the witnessing of your own eyes. So just being intentional about not baiting. And also that's a great opportunity to demonstrate what assertiveness looks like. It's a great opportunity to demonstrate that. And I understand that it may sometimes have its play. I know some parents often, well, I want to see if they will be honest. And I'm not going to say that never has its place. I wouldn't go that far. But instead of an opportunity to see if they will be honest, look at it as an opportunity, again, to display those assertiveness skills. Look at it as an opportunity to be straightforward and honest and have an open conversation with them. All right. So, again, those four things are: be honest. Again, these are four simple ways to encourage honesty. Be honest ourselves, acknowledge honesty, avoid shaming, and avoid baiting. And these are all things we pull from our quote from the day, our proverb, which was, a child who fears beating would never admit that he played with a missing knife. So our goal, our desire is to cultivate an environment where our kids feel safe to be honest. That's the goal, where they feel safe to be honest, because again, we know what can be produced when we are in that survival mode, that fear mode. And so we want to create an environment where they feel safe to be honest. So out of those four, I'm curious to know, which one do you want to commit to practicing this week? Which one do you want to commit to be intentional about practicing this week? Out of those four, I'm going to show them one more time. Again, being honest, acknowledging honesty, avoid shaming, or avoiding baiting. You just put 1, 2, 3, or 4. So whichever one you choose, I have no doubt that it will help support in your journey, again, to cultivate that environment of honesty, even if that has not been the case up until this point. Okay, but I hope that this is a tool that can assist you on that journey. So I told you guys, we are in and out this month, just with little nuggets here and there, pulling pieces of wisdom from these African proverbs. And so I hope you guys are able to utilize something. If so, let me know in the chat. And until next time, you guys, keep growing in gentleness.